married. We're on the way to marriage, but we have a few things first to settle over here, which is what? That now, Eliezer, he knows her, he has the signs. What are the signs, right, that she gave him the water to drink, and to the camels and everything, all these things? Well, they all came true, just like he requested from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and more than he requested, right? But now, he asked her a question. He asked her, listen, whose daughter are you? Which family are you from? Why is he asking this question? Because as we know, right, that he had to find from the family of Avraham Avinu. That was the whole objective over here. You know what I mean? So he asked her, "Whose daughter are you? Which family do you come from?" He didn't want just anybody from any family. He wanted from Avram's family. That was the whole point. So she comes and tells him, "No, don't worry about it. I come from Avram's family. I'm the daughter of Betuel, and my brother is Lavan, Arami. You know, my brother is him. I come from that family." So she explained to him everything. But then she asked him a question. He asked her a question. He said, "Listen, you know, you have a place in your house that I can dwell there, stay overnight?" So she answers him in her fashion, right? In her particular fashion, which is what he asked her, "Can you let me stay there for one night?" But he comes out. She says, "No, not one night." She says, "I can let you stay for many nights. So don't we can let you stay there for as much as you want, as long as you want. It can be for a week, for a month, whatever you want." She was more generous than he was asking, and this is exactly what happened with the water, also, by the way, right? That she was more generous than him. He was just asking for himself, and she gave also to the camels. So she was, above and beyond, as we said right last week, all the expectations. And then it goes on to say, "Vatomer elav bat betuel anochi ben milka asher yadeh lenacho, vayomer elav gam teben gam mispor rav imanu gam makom lalun, vayikod haish vayishtachvu le'Adonai." So once he hears right that this is the right girl, he's very happy now. So he bows down to Hashem and he gives thanks to God, right? He says, I thank you very much for letting me find the right girl for my master's son. So then he, as we said, right, he says a prayer about that, a thanksgiving prayer, and then vataratz hana'ara vataged lebet ima kadevarim ha'ele, right? So then she went to the Rivka, and she went to her mother, and she told him, "What's the story, right? This guy wants to, marry me this for his master's son." She's very happy about it, obviously. So now all of a sudden, right, that Lavan starts to get into the picture over here. Why is that? What does he have to do with this? He's the brother. He's not the parents. He's not the one who was to give the child over for marriage. But Lavan was he was mesmerized over here. What happened? He saw all the wealth, right, that he brought with him, all the gifts and this and the jewelry and all these things. So he was amazed, and he says, "Wow, this guy must be a millionaire. This guy, whoa!" So what difference does it make for him? He bought that stuff for him. He didn't bring it for him. He bought it for the bride. But anyway, Ravan was a thief. You understand? He was a crook. So he was trying to now pick out some way, to maybe to get this guy's money and get everything for himself. That was the whole point. Lavan was a crook. So what did he do? He comes, right, and he checks out everything. He sees all this, and he checks out, eyes, puts his eyes on everything, and he already starts to devise a plan, Lavan, to get the wealth for himself. Yeah, to kill him. Yeah, that was the whole thing. So comes now Eliezer, and starts to speak with the parents. So Lavan invites him in, right? Says, "Don't come inside. We have plenty of place for you, no problem." And he also told him, right? He says, I vacated the house. He says, I cleaned it out. That's right, exactly, from Avodah Zarah, because they used to worship idols in their house. This was an idolatrous house, the Christian, whatever. This was a church over there, you understand? So now they had to take out all the idols and bring in, Eliezer. You cannot be two things together. Eliezer was a tzaddik, cannot have both together. So they asked him, they said, who are you? So he tells them, this is the answer he tells them. He says, "Vayomer Eved Avraham Anochi." So he says, I'm the slave of Avraham. So they're looking at this guy, and saying, you're the slave of Avraham. They didn't, it was hard for them to believe such a thing like that. What's the reason why it was so hard to believe? Because Eliezer, they say, right, was the son of a king. He was the son of Nimrod. You know what I mean? So Nimrod was a king, and he was a very impressive looking guy, this guy, Nimrod. So Eliezer looked just like him. He looked just like his father, So looking at this guy, he says, oh my God, this guy looks like a melech, And he's telling us that he's a slave. Doesn't fit in, doesn't fit into the narrative over here, what's going on. So they were all amazed. But this was an amazing thing. Why? Why was this amazing? Because they said, my God, if he's really a slave, this guy, can you imagine what his master is? You can imagine, if that's the way a slave looks supposed to look. So this same thing, by the way, they say happened with Yosef, when Yosef HaTzadik, when they sold him, to go to Mitzrayim and all this stuff. So the Midianim who came, right, to buy Yosef over there, they sold him for like a few silver pieces. So they asked him, they said, who is this guy that you want to buy this? You want to buy him? So they asked him, who is this you're trying to sell this guy? So he says, they told him, he's our slave, So they're looking at Yosef, and saying, this is a slave? He says, he looks like he's your master. He says, he looks more like a king than you guys look, So it was the same idea, you understand? It was like an amazing thing,
with the Shlomo Melech and Malkat Shva.
Right, the what?
Malkat Shva, she came.
Yeah.
And Shlomo Melech sent his Sarah Tzava
right.
to meet her.
Yeah.
And when she came down and she saw him, she thought this is Shlomo Melech. And
right.
And she said to her, thank you that you as a king come to...
Right, it's creepy. Yeah.
And he said, no, I'm the slave of Shlomo Melech.
Right. So this was, but you're talking about, this is not just like a servant. We're not talking about here about a sar, we're talking about a slave, mamash, an eved, it's even lower than that, you know what I mean? So, ותלד שרה אשת אדוני את בן אדוני אחרי זקנתה. So we're not telling him about the story, right? Who gave birth to who, and how the Yitzchak came out, and all this. And he's telling him, listen, we're all over here family, we're all cousins over here, so we belong together. So one big happy family. Right? So it says, וישביעני אדוני לאמור, לא תיקח אישה לבני, בבנות כנעני אשר אנוכי יושב בארצו. So he says, you know what? My master made me swear, as we said last week, right? That I'm not allowed to take anybody from Eretz Canaan to be a wife for Yitzchak. So I have no choice. I have to come here and have to speak with you. There's no other option for me. But the truth is, there was another option, which was what? He tells them later like this: "Ve'im lo el bet avi telech ve'el mishpachti ve'lakachti isha libni ve'yomer el Adoni ulai lo telech ha'isha acharei." So now he starts to tell the whole story, right? How Abraham even given the instructions, whatever, and then he tells them the story also about Rivka and how he met her at the well, and what she did and what she didn't do. So we're going over the whole narrative again, from one time to another. It's like twice we're telling over the same story, which is, it's a nice story, but the question is really, it's one of the strangest things to hear is like this, right? That in the Torah, there's very limited space, when it comes to concentration of things. So how can it be that such a story like this, which is not really so important, like what difference does it really make all these things? How is it that it's told over twice, which takes up a huge amount of space in the Torah? The Gemara asks this question, the Talmud asks this question. But when it comes to the laws of Shabbat, we're talking about maybe a few psukim, So when it comes to Shabbat, which is like the most central thing about Judaism, the Torah is so cheap with the space, it's so frugal. A few psukim, 1, 2, 3, that's it, that's no more. The rest is in the Talmud, about the Shabbat, how we do the Shabbat with all these things. They're written in the Torah Shabbat pen, the oral Torah. But when it comes to this story, it's taking up like 100 times more space than Shabbat. Is it that important? That's what the Gemara asks, by the way, this question. So what's the answer then? Why? It seems like also kind of boring, like to hear the story again, over and over. What's So the answer, what does Gemara say? The Gemara says, these stories of the Avot, of the forefathers, were more beloved to Hashem, to God, than the laws of Moshe Rabbeinu. You know what I mean? The most important laws of Moshe Rabbeinu, Shabbat, this is more beloved to God than that. So then you ask a question, you say, why? What's the big deal? Like why does he love this so much? It's a nice story. What Hashem likes the story time is a storyteller. What's going on here? So after you think about it, in truth, what's there to love over here so much? And the answer is, I think, my personal opinion, I thought about this, for a while. I said to myself, what it is? That you have to understand the character, the nature of the people who were in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, his generation, and the generation of Avraham Avinu. What's the difference between them? And if you really look in the psukim, in the narratives, you see what the difference is, right? That the whole period of Moshe Rabbeinu, generation of Moshe, is full of one thing. It's full of chutzpah, like arrogance and complaining, fighting, machloket and all these things. It's not a very pleasant narrative at all. I mean, as soon as Moshe Rabbeinu gets elected to be, the boss, everybody's complaining about him and this and they by the way, they also accuse him of doing crimes also. Can you imagine? They suspected that he was an adulterer, he was making, taking their wives and all kinds of things. Can you imagine? A big rabbi like this, big leader, they could suspect him of all kinds of things like this, this petty stuff. And complaining all the time, you took away this from us, you took away that from us, we have no food, we have no drinks, we have this and that, all the time, right? They curse him, what didn't they do? They did everything to him. And by the way, this is one of the conditions that HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a person a leader of Am Yisrael. Every leader of Am Yisrael has to know one thing. It's brought down in the words of Chazal, in the Talmud, everywhere, it's brought down. That one. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him like this. He also told to Moshe Rabbeinu the same thing. Listen, you want to be leader of my people? I'm letting you go. No problem. You got the job. But just know one thing. My sons, my children, are complainers. They're very difficult. All the time they're going to curse you. They're going to beat you up. They're going to hit you. They're going to give you a punch. They're going to say lashon hara about you, slander you. They're going to do everything to you. You agree? You still agree? If you do, okay, go. But if not, this is a condition which you have to agree to, because otherwise there's no job. You understand? So what does that mean?
So why Moshe Rabbeinu, when he complained about Am Yisrael, Hashem was upset on him?
That's the whole point. There's nothing to complain about. You understand? In other words,
if the Am is talking like this and behaving like this, why you don't need to complain? You need to
because you have to know this is a job. You know what I mean? This is a job. They're going to give you a big headache. Not only are you going to get a headache from them, you're also being hurting on your body. You understand? You're going to be going to have a body ache too. By the way, And there were, as you know, there were not only Moshe Rabbeinu, but we're talking about other leaders who were killed by the people. They actually killed the leaders. That happened a few times. So it's not a joke. When you take a leadership job, look now what's going on with Netanyahu. You're gonna take a look, and you'll see exactly the same. Same thing. And there isn't one day this guy, right? He's been the prime minister now for 10 years now, whatever. There isn't one day they haven't spread some lies about him, some gossip, slander. This every day it's like that. It doesn't stop. I was there, for many years, and I can tell you, it's just like it's a wonder. It's like, okay, my God, how much can you slander somebody? How much can you degrade somebody? How can you deride? It's a disgrace, but that's the way it is. That's a job. Understand? So this is what Kadosh Baruch Hu tells to the leaders of Am Yisrael. So getting back to what we're saying, that now, right? Eliezer comes to them, and he starts to tell them a story. So now, our question was like this, right? Why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu love so much this narrative? Say it over twice. So the answer is, Abotai, that if you look at the attitude during the time of Avraham Avinu, it was just the opposite of what it was in Moshe Rabbeinu's time. As we said, right? Moshe Rabbeinu's time was all arrogance, complaining, and this and that, machloket, fighting, this, that. Avraham Avinu, everything nice, pure, sweet. Look at the way he behaves to his fellow man. Right? People who are idol worshippers, every Rabbi respect, bows down to them. Understand? Gives them the utmost in respect, utmost in kavod, utmost in derech eretz. As we see, right, that when he brought the Marat Machpelah from from the Canaanites over there, the Chittim, right? How much respect did he give them? He bowed down to them, bowed down, and even though they don't deserve that, they're sinners. These people, there's wicked people, but he bowed down. What derech eretz? What ziloba? It's perfect behavior. So that's the difference, you understand? Over here, the behavior of Eliezer also was like that. Eliezer was a Talmid of Avraham Avinu. So he also absorbed that attitude, the behavior, humility, anava, decency, very quiet, very humble. That's the way it was with them. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he sees this kind of behavior, He loves that more than anything else. You understand? Humility, anava, tabdabloba. Why do you have to make yourself so big? To scream out. And there was just over here an incident. You guys. I'm happy. I think you were not here. You for sure you were not here. I think you also were not here. But yesterday there was two guys, Hasidic guys, came over here. And they wanted to get. You saw that? You were here? You saw that? Yeah. So what happened was that they came to ask for a donation, whatever. And the president was praying over there, and what happened was that they came to me and they asked me. They said, if we want to get a donation, who should we speak to? Who's the gabbai here? So I said the gabbai is praying. Be my guest, But I didn't really mean to tell him go up and speak with him now. But I told him this is the guy. So he was in the middle of the saying korbanot. You know what I'm saying? Before Torah. So what happened was that they came up and started talking to Soso. So Soso is a very gentle guy. He's a sweetheart, Yeah. So he answered them. He stopped and he started answering them. So one guy over here when he saw this, he got really, really angry, really angry, and he started to yell and scream, and say all kinds of 4-letter words, Georgian style, whatever. Bam, 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 bam. And these guys were blown away. They couldn't believe, this guy was so. And in the end, everything came out okay. He gave him the checks, he gave him the money, whatever. But you see, this is not the way to behave. You understand? You have to when you see some people doing something you don't like, you shouldn't just embarrass them like that. Scream at them and all kinds of things. You said all kinds of words in the Bet Knesset in the shul, which you shouldn't say in the Bet Knesset. Things like this, all kinds of curse words. Allah Hashem yirachem, right? Hashem should forgive him. Hashem should forgive us that we heard this thing in the Bet Knesset in the shul. But anyway, the point is, Rabotai, that the attitude of Avraham Avinu in his generation was all sweet words, sweet behavior, everything, humility, anava, tabdabloba. That's nothing better than that. So Kadosh Baruch Hu loves that. When he hears these stories, it's more beloved to him because of the attitude than the arrogance, Moshe Rabbeinu's time. Everything is arrogant. Everything is complaining. Everything is, all the time. Why this? Why this happened to me? Why that happened to me? Why this? Why that? All the time. Big headache, all the time. The headache never stops.
The situation of Abraham Avinu and the situation of Moshe, it was not the same situation.
Sure.
Here you're dealing with the
right,
nation. And Abraham Avinu was a private person with his family.
To be honest with you, you should know, by the way.
It's two different things.
You're asking a good question, but
maybe if
I must tell you.
in Moshe Rabbeinu's position, he will have the same problems.
I must tell you a couple of things about that. Number one is that what happened was over here, we have a narrative also with Moshe Rabbeinu himself. I'm talking about the people. Put the people aside. What happened was that Moshe Rabbeinu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, listen, go to Paro, start speaking with him, let's get the ball rolling. I got to get him out of here already. The Jews. The time has come. I got to get him out. So Moshe Rabbeinu goes to Paro. And once he goes, not only things didn't get better, things got worse, you understand? Yeah. Paro now tells him, listen, you're not going to get straw anymore, you got to gather the straw yourself, and you have to keep the same amount of bricks, So that means you got to work twice as hard, basically, right, as before, or even more, right, whatever it is. So now Moshe Rabbeinu, right, hears this, and comes now Datan v'Aviram, and confronts Moshe Rabbeinu. They confront him. Mm-hmm. They say, Hashem should curse you, but they cursed him, right in public, in front of everybody. What you just did to us, it's not humane what you did to us. Not humane. So Moshe Rabbeinu hears this, right? I said, and he goes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he tells him, listen, do me a favor, I want to know what's going on here. You told me you're going to save the Jews. I should go to Paro and speak with him. And not only got the things that you didn't save them, but it got worse, and now it's gone downhill, right? And I'm paying for it. I'm the one who's paying the price. You understand? This is what he tells him. So why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu answer him? The Midrash says like this, right? The Midrash says, tells Moshe Rabbeinu tells HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, I see there's a difference between you and Avraham Avinu. He says, he says, why? He says, when I tested Avraham Avinu with all kinds of trials and tribulations, you understand? He passed all of them. I gave him 10 tests, right? Mm-hmm. He passed everything. He never complained one word to me. And you, look how you behave, You now, when you're complaining to me, It didn't happen what you thought was going to happen. It's not going at the pace that you wanted. It's not going at the rate that you wanted. Things are not going your way, huh? So he told him, he says, you're not like Abraham. You're not the same. So that's one thing, right? Well, I must tell you, but there's also another thing, which is that Be'emet, Avraham Avinu, you have to know, people don't realize one thing about Avraham Avinu. They think that Avraham Avinu was a private guy, private individual. And he was, with his family and with some friends and, some relatives and this, extended family. Is that really the truth? It's not really the truth. Because we know, right, the Chazal tell us that Avraham Avinu was made the melech of the world. They gathered together, the whole world, right? And they said, you're the melech, you're the prince of God. They made him into the melech. You understand? He was a melech, Avraham Avinu. He was a king. You understand? So it's not exactly, what you think that Avraham Avinu was just a guy sitting in the house, smoking nargila, whatever, smoking some cigarettes and whatever. It wasn't like that. He was a public figure. He was he was a leader of the whole world. They knew that. Everybody knew that. And nevertheless, though, all his dealings with the public was always with humility, bowing down, putting your head down low. How much better that is. You see, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves that much more than the laws of Shabbat. And
wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu the humblest person in the world?
You're right.
Not only in his time.
Yeah.
Throughout the beginning and end of the world.
Right.
He was the humblest.
Yes. Yes, you're absolutely right. In his generation, he was the most humble. You understand? But apparently,
in his generation, or throughout the Torah. Or
so that's what Kadosh Baruch Hu told him. You see, he says, you may be in your generation the most humblest, but you don't come to your forefathers. You don't come to them.
So the forefather was more humble.
Yeah.
But the Torah said that there was no like Moshe Rabbeinu in Navah.
Right, not Navah. Torah says about Nevuah, right? That's something else. If you look at the Psukim over there, it's talking about prophecy, right?
No, they said there is no like Moshe Rabbeinu.
Right, in his generation, that's what it means. It doesn't say every generation. That doesn't say that. But anyway, these things are very, we're talking about big people, giants, you know what I mean? We're talking about little things, whatever, little differences, but the point is, Rabbi, that the Chazal say something amazing, that for him, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this nice story, she came with the rings and this, and the water and this, is more entertaining to HaKadosh Baruch Hu than the laws of Shabbat. It's an amazing thing, it's an amazing thing. And by the way, this is exactly what the Balei Musar, they say, the ones who wrote the books of Musar, ethical works in Judaism, they say that what? That developing a good character, midot, is more important than everything else. It goes above everything. In other words, what are you considered to be if a person is like religious, let's say, right? Keeps the mitzvot and studies Torah, behaves like a jerk, So they say, right, that this is like, what it resembles? A person like this, even if he's a rabbi, by the way, could be a rabbi also, could be a Talmid Chacham, could be this. It resembles a swine, a pig. Excuse my expression. You have a swine, right? And the swine. Okay, we know it's not kosher, right? We don't eat it, but that's not what we're talking about now. We're talking about the way it lives its life. How does a pig live? Always in the filth, always in the mud, always in the dirt. Likes to be in the dirt. Doesn't like clean places. You know what I mean? So it's like so the swine, the pig, is always like smelly and stinky. Because of that. They're never clean. Mm-hmm. So you got to watch out with that. So hopefully you'll never see one. But anyway, the point is that they say, right, that it's like a pig like that, who's a disgusting animal, and he has a nose ring, in his nose. You know what I'm saying? So meaning what? That there's a piece of gold there, 24 karat gold, nice piece of jewelry there, beautiful, gorgeous, but it's in the nose of a pig. You know what I mean? So that's exactly what it is. What's the analogy? The analogy is, right, that golden ring is the Torah. That person has Talmid Chacham. He has Torah. So that's gold. It's like the best thing in the world. There's nothing like the Torah. You know what I mean? But your behavior is like it's like a pig, like a swine. So it's a disgusting thing, to see one with the other. It doesn't go. You know what I mean? It doesn't go together.
So it's forbidden to behave in that manner, no matter what.
You see what he's asking? This is an amazing question.
We're human beings. We get upset. I don't know what went down here. You were talking about.
It was quite a show. You should have seen it. We should have filmed it. We should have. Yeah. You missed it. What can I tell you?
Tomorrow, 7 o'clock, they're going to have a show.
I think he would have won the Oscar. Easily would have won the Oscar.
No, I'm upset. I missed this
Musician,
because
you have a lot of hadran. Don't worry.
I'm very upset. I eat new material all the time, so I can.
Tomorrow, 7 o'clock.
Understand? But his question is a very powerful question. And the truth is, David, I must tell you that the Zohar deals with this question, Zohar Kadosh, which is the source of the Kabbalah, and everything. This is very deep stuff over there. So the Zohar says something amazing. Zohar says that a person always has to remain calm. Never should lose his temper. Never should go crazy, start yelling, screaming, this and that. This is not the way of Judaism, not the way of Derech Eretz, it's not the way of Zdiloba. It's not the way to live.
It shouldn't be a way of any.
Right, exactly. That's
Any
something.
human.
Exactly. So the Zohar says, by the way, that even though 99.99% of the time you should be like that, there's one exception.
When it comes to your wife.
No.
Oh God! Don't get me in trouble now. So
When it comes to the Georgian congregation.
I don't say, I knew you.
He's injured, David. He's
Oh my
injured.
God.
Ouch.
What happened?
He'll tell you about it later. So,
Forgive me.
Okay, that's okay.
Forgive me.
so now I'll tell you something. There's only one exception, David.
Oh my God.
The exception is like this. The Zohar says if you're doing it l'shem shamayim, because why? You see that the tzibur, the community, right, is doing some kind of a sin, not behaving properly.
Okay.
So you're allowed to get angry at them
I knew you
to rebuke them. What's going on here? What's going on? What? This is becoming a zoo. This is how you're supposed to behave in the Beit Knesset.
That's the famous story with Jesus. He did that when he saw the dealing and wheeling with money and the
Right, but you should know those stories are quite tainted, David. I must tell you. They're quite tainted. So I wouldn't bring an example from there. But what I can tell you is, one thing, that a person when he gets angry says the Arizal.
Forgive me, Jim. Forgive me.
The Arizal says an amazing thing. It comes from the Zohar also, this information. The Arizal says when a person gets angry, you know how much damage it does to his soul, neshama? It does tremendous damage to him. By the way, it's also bad for your health. You can get heart disease and all kinds of things from there, come from anger. Anger is a very dangerous thing. Very dangerous. But in terms of what it does to your neshama, so it says the Arizal that when you get angry, you lose your neshama. You lose it. It goes away. What does that mean? That you have basically, simply speaking, 3 parts of the neshama, right? Which is the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama, the upper one. What happens is that you may have a good soul, you may be a good person, right? You may be a good Jew, God bless you. When you get angry, what happens is, it says the Arizal, you lose that neshama, that good neshama that you have. So what stays over there? How do you stay alive? If you lose your neshama, you should die. No, God forbid, right? So then, how do you stay alive? Every time you get angry, when you die, God forbid. So that's not what it is. What it means is, right, that the nefesh, the lower part, which keeps the body functioning, stays there, but the upper part leaves. Understand? So what happens is that not only it leaves. Now, if it was just only that bad, it wouldn't. Okay, we could live with that. Not only it leaves, but also something else comes in its place. You understand? In other words, there's a replacement that goes on here, a switch. What does that mean? That instead of having the neshama, which is from the good side, comes from the neshama from the evil side, from the side of the Satan.
Is it also the same thing for women? Or
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's no difference. What difference does it make? So it comes from the neshama from the Satan and takes its place. And that's why they say, by the way, an amazing thing, right? That in the Chazal, there's a rule like this, that you're not allowed to look at the face of a Rasha. Why? Why is that? Because it harms you. There's something bad, a bad energy that comes from this person. You understand? So when you look at that bad energy that comes from him, right? They say that person can even go blind. What does that mean? Over time, if he looks at him a long time, he can lose his vision because of that. Becomes blurry, can go blind. And by the way, this actually happened to people. This is not something just in theory. Yitzchak Avinu, they say he went blind. Why? Because he was looking at Esav. Right? Esav was a Rasha, so he was looking at him. Right? And by the way, he was the forefather of your friend. He was the of your friend that you spoke about. So We'll talk about this some other time. But anyway,
Rabbi, excuse me.
yeah,
The person gets angry, the
Yeah.
evil neshama comes in.
right.
The person comes down. Then
Yeah.
replace him again.
So what happens is like this. Listen to now. This is a good. You're asking good because we have to understand this. Says the Arizal, that evil neshama comes into him now, and this is exactly they say right there. What? You're not allowed to look at this person when he's angry. Why? Because now he's a rasha. He has an evil neshama in him. You understand? So you're looking at a rasha now, and you're looking at that anger in his face. You know how the anger is, right? The redness and the expression and all. You know, it's like that can harm you. It's very harmful because you're looking at an evil person right now. He lost his neshama.
So how is
Understand?
happening those things that the Rabbanim had this problem?
Oh, good. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, very good. We have to talk about this. You know, if we should talk about it, let's talk about it. So it says the Arizal, amazing thing, right? That when you lose the neshama, when you get angry, it takes a very, very long time to get the old neshama back. It can take quite a while. Sometimes it may never come back. Depends on if the person does tshuva. First of all, he has to relax, calm down. He has to calm down, and he has to, do all kinds of. By the way, they say that also he loses his zchuyot because of this. He loses his merits, all kinds of things. It's a very terrible, terrible thing, and this is why they say, right? The Arizal was always angry. Was always careful never to lose his temper for anything. The Talmidim, right? His students, they testify about him. So what happened was that, right? I'll tell you a story and then you understand much better. They say one day, two guys came to the Arizal, two Jews, and they started behave like wise guys with him, all kinds of nonsense, this, that, jokes, this. So they wanted to mock him. It was pretty clear. So they say, right, that the Arizal, once he heard what they were talking about, then he understood what was going on. So he started to yell at them, He said, "Get out of here!" He yelled at them, and he threw them out of the room, So the Talmidim, the disciples who were there, you understand? He had disciples. They said, "Rabbi," says, "we never saw you get angry in our lives. This is the first time we ever saw such thing like that." So they asked him. They said, didn't you tell us that you're not allowed to do this and how dangerous it is and all that? We described all this. They asked him this question. So you know what he answered them? Arizal. So he said, you don't understand. The Arizal, by the way, had powers to see the soul of the person. Like he could read the soul, So he knew who that soul was and where he was from and when he needed the tikkun and all the rectification. He could read, you could see on your forehead who you are, what you came here for, what your tikkun is, your rectification. He knew everything. So he told them, he said, you know what? These two guys who I just threw out, he said, these are the Gilgulim. They are the reincarnation of Datan Ba'aviram, who were the Moshe Rabbeinu's time, So he said, the only way to treat people like this, you have to yell at them and, give them like this. That's the only way, you understand? So what do we see from there? It's exactly what we just saw in the Zohar, right? We just said that what the Zohar says, that the only time you're allowed to get angry is because of this kind of situation. When you see people like messing around, spiritually wise, going down the tubes, and you need to put them back in their place, to get them to wake up. They're sleeping, they're like, so you want to yell at them and go, and give it to them, all the way. You understand?
Is that what
and
is that what happened here?
I don't think so. I think it was a little bit different, and I'll explain to you later why that is, but the point is, Rabotai, that's the only time a person is allowed to do that, when he's doing it l'shem shamayim, because something is happening, there's sinning going on, and he wants to give it to them. And this is not, says the Zohar, by the way, if he does it for this reason, no harm will come to him whatsoever. Can you imagine? He's doing the same thing, but it's just a different reason. It's a different thing. Exactly, that's the whole thing. So basically, that's what it is, Abutai. That a person has to, be very, very careful about anger and all these things.
But once the person comes down, the good neshama replaces the bad neshama?
According to what I saw in the books, it takes quite a long time for it to come back.
But the person comes down in 5 minutes.
Yes, that's true. But he needs more than that to come down. There's more. He has to do mitzvot. He has to do some Torah. He has to do, he needs. I cannot tell you a direct time frame. There isn't. The truth is, but
so
he has to.
Neshama comes back, but it's not going to be tarnished.
Jimmy's
not because it's tarnished. No, it takes a while. You have to do some. You need some merits for that. You need some zchuyot.
Rabbi, tell us, did our neshama come back? That's did we get it back?
I don't know. I got angry at Rabbi when I was in the yeshiva. So 30 years ago.
Right. Well, we know nobody's perfect. I can tell you, nobody's perfect. But Rabbatai, really. So what are we saying over here, Rabbatai? That it's an amazing thing that Kadosh Baruch Hu loves more than anything else a person who has good midot. What's good character traits? Doesn't get angry, doesn't lose his temper. You know? Why? Because what does that show? That shows that a person is really, inside, in his heart, he's humble, He doesn't think too much of himself. He doesn't think like it's a place of God, Even if you're a big rabbi, you're a big chacham. So what do you think if you scream and yell, well, everything is going to happen the way you want? It's not going to be like that, So you have to think about what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think? It's you're just going to be like, you press your anger button, blah, 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 and everything is going to change. It's not going to be like that. It may get even worse, by the way. That's the whole thing, right? They say also that a person who gets angry, he also loses his wisdom, He behaves irrationally. He does all kinds of illogical things. You know what I mean? The anger causes him to lose his wisdom, to lose his neshama, everything. He loses everything. Understand? That's why the Chazal say. Yeah, exactly. So that's what the Chazal say, right? That the most important thing is the midot, and this is what we see over here, right? That Kadosh Baruch Hu, because of the midot, of Avraham Avinu, the way he behaved with humility, bowing down to people who are like, excuse the expression, the jackasses. These people, he's bowing down to them. Why bow down to a jackass? For what? Because this is the way you make people, you make a good impression on everybody. And when you make a good impression, then you can bring them closer to God. This is the way to do it. You know what I mean? And this is a trick, by the way, you should know. That if a person, this is what it says in Pirkei Avot. Amazing thing says Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, right? One of the most amazing books we have in the Torah. That one. It says, Eze mechubad, who is considered to be an honorable person? Honorable. Right, exactly. That's it. You know what I'm saying? You see what he said? I'll explain to you. The question is like this, right? Who is an honorable person? Is it the guy who's got a lot of money? Is it the guy who's got a lot of, kavod, a lot of respect in front? He's got like a big status, he's got a big job, big position. The Torah says, no, that's not an honorable person. That's not what it is. So then what? It's the honorable person is the one who honors others. In other words, by the way you behave to others, it shows what you also are. You know what I mean? If you honor people, you behave with them with respect. You give them the proper, And Avraham Avinu gave them more than they deserved. You understand? That's the whole thing. So when you give more, it's like chassidut. You're like doing more than you really need to do, right? It's not really. And halakha doesn't require you to do that. But that's like, it's like icing on the cake. It's chassidut. It's even more than you need. So Kadosh Baruch Hu, we see from here, loves this more than anything else, and that's why, right? The generation of Moshe Rabbeinu, even though with all their spiritual height, they were very spiritually very high. This was like the ultimate spiritually high generation, Moshe Rabbeinu generation, But when it comes to their behavior, it wasn't proper behavior, All the time complaining, all the time, lashon hara, all the time, all kinds of accusations and all kinds of disrespect, all kinds of chutzpah. This is not the way to conduct. Okay, let's go on, Rabbi.
Rabbi, can I ask you something before I forget?
Yeah.
Jimmy wasn't there. We were there.
Yeah.
We were kids.
Yeah.
Remember the incident with Chacham Pinchas?
I was afraid he was going to mention that.
Looking back at it now,
Yeah.
do you think that they were right the way they behaved?
Well, I can tell you that
You remember we were there that Saturday.
there's a whole.
Can you kind of refresh our...
I don't think we should get into it now. This whole story, because I'll tell you why. We shouldn't get into it right now. The story, because there's a lot of background information you have to know about this whole thing. Right. So it's not really. I'm not going to teach us much right now to talk about this. This is not the subject matter. But later on, I can explain to you what that is possible. Yes. Okay. So anyway, getting back to what we said, right? That now, as we said, once they hear the whole story, the narrative is said over again. So now, right? Lavan has a different business, right? He wants to rob him, as we said, right? He has a different business in mind. He's not talking about marriage. He's talking about profit, greed, So what did they do? They devise a plan, really, to kill Eliezer, right?
Who's they?
Lavan and his,
The daughter, Rivka's father, Rivka's family.
Right, exactly, yeah. I don't know exactly how many people were in on it, you know what I'm saying?
Not the family.
So what happened was that they poisoned some food, you know what I'm saying? They put a poison in food in front of him. They said, "Oh, you came to us, have some, have a little lunch by us, enjoy it. It was poison." So, lucky for him, Eliezer, right, that he didn't want to eat right now. He wanted to do the business that he had to do. You know what I mean? He didn't want to now take time out to pleasure himself. You understand? He wanted to finish the business already. Get it over with. He has a job to do. He didn't come here for fun. He didn't come here for recreation. So he tells him, he says, let's put the plate on the side. Let me tell you what I have to tell you, That's exactly what happened. So he never ate that. That's why he didn't die. Otherwise, he would have to go to the hospital.
The said that the Malach Gabriel came and he turned the plates.
Yeah.
So the father ate Eliezer plate.
Right, yeah, for sure, yeah, there's no question about that.
Why
it's just
the reason why next day he was dead. Because there was only Lavan.
Yes, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what happened, right? Yeah. As we're going to see later on, that Betuel was the one who ate that. You understand? Betuel was the father of Lavan. So the plates got switched, and Betuel ate it instead. But what happened was that when they gave him the plate at that time, he said, I don't want to eat now. I want to first do my business. That's what he told them. Yeah. That's what he told them. So what happened was that now he tells them a story. So what happens is now that they listen to this whole narrative. And so Betuel now was thinking already in his head, says, I don't want to do this, I'm not interested. He doesn't want to do it, right? So because of the fact that he didn't want the marriage, he didn't want to agree to the marriage, so Kadosh Baruch Hu came and killed him. That's exactly what happened, right? Because of the...
What was his narrative? What was his thought process?
Well, this guy was a Rasha, you know what I mean? When it comes to a Rasha, they have all kinds of strange things in their head. It doesn't really say exactly why he refused, by the way. It's
because of the age.
Everything is possible.
She was 3 years old.
Anything is possible. It could be all kinds of reasons, right? It could be all kinds of reasons. But the point is, right, that he died, Betuel. So in the end, when they had to give her in marriage, he was already out of the picture. That's what it says in the Chumash. So it tells them a story. But what they did was that even though besides Betuel, right, the other family members, they pretty much agreed to give Rivka over. They thought it was a nice deal. Why? Because going into a rich family, nice, wealthy, cushy life. So what can be better than that? So they agreed to it. But there was one thing they had a machloket. They had a little dispute, right? What was the dispute? The dispute was that Eliezer wanted to take her right now. He said, listen, pack your bags and let's go now. There's not gonna be any waiting period over here. So they said, no, but wait a second, let her wait, about 10 months, a year, and then we'll do the marriage in a year. So the truth is, right, according to the custom of even, how it was in the Jewish communities, they were right, because usually when you agree to a marriage, they give them a year to get ready. That's exactly what happens, in the old days. Today we do less time. We don't do that much time, because there's a reason for that, by the way. Today we don't do like they used.
By the Hasidim.
Right, that's much better, by the way. Much better. The shorter it is, the better it is.
Yeah, the shorter it is, better it is. So
absolutely.
They change the mind.
Moreno Rabbeinu, Rav Ovadia used to tell us, by the way, Rav Ovadia, that once you agree to the marriage, he said, don't take more than 3 months. They said, 3 months minus, not plus, right? That's it. That's exactly what it said. And what's the reason, by the way, Rabotai? What's the difference between now and then? In the old days, they used to take a year, but it's a different world today. Okay, what's the difference? The difference is like this: when they used to, in those days, when they used to get engaged and then wait a year until the marriage, the logic was like this, right? That they have to prepare. What does that mean? To get the money together, save up money. It takes a lot of money to do the wedding and all these things. The expenses and buying them a house and this and building them this and giving them clothing and all the supplies and everything takes a lot of time for this. It's not a joke. We're talking about a lot of money. So they give them time to do all these things, preparations, make all the preparations. So it's logical, to make it a year. But what they did was like this, right? That when it comes to marriage, there's 2 stages of marriage. There's kiddushin and there's chuppah. Yeah. Okay, so how does it work? The kiddushin is when you give the ring, right?
Engagement.
Yeah, that's called engagement, right? But loosely, right? Loosely, because I'll explain to you how it doesn't exactly work out the way nowadays like that. Because we're talking about, when you go to the chuppah and you see that he gives the ring to the girl, we're talking about that ring, right? We're not talking about the ring that they give before, whatever it is that they give before. I don't know exactly what the gifts and all that stuff. We're not talking about that. So what does that mean? When you do kiddushin with a girl, when you give her the ring under the chuppah, so that's already considered to be like she's your wife. Except that you have to do chuppah to finish with her, and then you can live with her, But until then, you're not allowed to live with her until you do the chuppah. That's the way it is, right? But so what happened was like this, right? They used to do the kiddushin. They would do the ring first, one stage, the first stage of marriage. Then they would wait a year, and then they would get married. But what happened was that year they would be separate, right? They never would see each other, the two, right, Chatan and Kala, right? Unless there was some kind of family function, they had to get together, whatever. And so things were like, very tsanua, very, very, right, exactly. They were very, very, very decent people, very, very, very proper. So there was no monkey business, hanky-panky going on, you know what I mean? But now what happens is like this, right? Once the girl and the guy get engaged. So first of all, they don't give the ring at that time. They don't do the kiddushin, right? They do everything together in one shot at the chuppah. Why is that, by the way? What's the reason why? Because we're afraid. There's a very big concern about that. Because what happens is like this, right? Once you give the ring and you do the kiddushin, she's considered to be your wife. So if she now goes with another guy, she's considered to be committing adultery. You understand? So that means that she's chayav now to the chayav mitah. She's liable to death because of that. She committed adultery. You understand? So because of that, what we do now is we're afraid that if we're going to do the kiddushin, and now she may go with another guy, you understand? We're going to make her liable to death. You understand? So that's going to be the worst thing in the world. So therefore we say, do everything in one shot. This way, right? If she did something hanky-panky with another guy, okay, it's not the end of the world, right? We can go on and with our lives and do what we have to do. But in those days, they used to do it like that. So they were right to ask for a year, but Eliezer didn't want that. Right? What's the reason why he didn't want that? Because he said, listen, these people are Rashaim. These are wicked people. Today they're going to commit to something. They're going to change their mind. Every day is going to be something, Chuti Paraskevi, everything is going to be different. You can't trust these people. They're going to tell you one day, they're going to change their mind all the time. So he said, no. I said 10 months, a year. No, it's not going to be like that. Now, it's now or never. That's it. You give it. That's the way it was. So they got a little bit, they got a little bit confused when they heard that. So they said, you know what? They thought about it. They said, you know what? Let's ask the girl herself if she agrees to go. So she can go. It's not a problem. She can go now. So they brought Rivka, and asked her. They said, do you agree to go with this man? So she gave a strange answer. By the way, she should have said either yes or no, right? One or the other. But she didn't say that. What she said was elech, right? What does that mean? I'll go, right? But you can say just yes or no. So why did she say I'll go? So Chazal say, right? There's a meaning to that. What she told him was like this. She said, I like this family so much. I want to get into this family so much. I'll even go against your will. In other words, even if you don't let me go, I'll go anyway. And I'm saying I'm gonna go with him, whether you like it or not. I'm going. That's what she told him. You understand? Why? Why was that, by the way? Why was she so attracted to this whole thing? Because she herself was a tzaddikat, you know what I mean? She was a righteous woman. She didn't want to stay with these wicked people, with these rashaim. They didn't want to, what business does she have with them? These idolaters, these, what's the connection? She wanted to get out of there as soon as possible, you understand? That's the way it is, by the way. Usually when you have a family situation like that, when the child is different than the parents, the parents are not religious, this guy's religious, he usually wants to get out of there, he doesn't want to stay there because he's in a bad situation. He's in a situation where every day he's being knocked for what he is and what he's supposed to be and what he didn't come out to be and all criticized and headache and all this, he cannot live like that. So what she wanted to do was get out of there as soon as possible, so she said, I'm going anyway, right? By the way, they say the Chazal that she was not like a regular girl, you understand? What does that mean? It says in the pasuk, right, that she was a betula, she was a virgin, you understand? So okay, she was a 3-year-old girl. I mean, you can't, it's not a big surprise to have a 3-year-old who's a virgin, but they say, they say that what's the story? The story is that not only she was a virgin, but she was a virgin twice. What does that mean twice? That in those days, the way it was like this, right? That after the flood of Noah occurred, right, and all the sins and everything, and people, the whole generation was wiped out. So after that, they say, right, that they were careful not to do, right, sexual, sins, Gilui Arayot. That's what they call it in Hebrew, right? They were careful. So they didn't want, the girls were guarding themselves not to go with men before they get married, not to fool around. You understand? What they were doing is like this, right? They were guarding themselves from the regular place, but from the irregular place, from behind, they were not guarding themselves, you understand? So they were doing like a double kind of thing, From there, yes, from here, no, why? Because over there, there's a hymen, you understand? So you can tell if it was broken, that's it. You cannot bring it back anymore. They say, by the way, the Chazal, that the hymen, before you're 3 years old, it regenerates. If you break it, it will come back. Yeah. Right? After 3 years old, it doesn't regenerate anymore. You understand? So therefore, what they did was, in those days, they knew that. They knew all these tricks, So what they did was that they used the back door. They were not using the front door, you know what I mean? So this way, right, they were having fun. but keeping also their virginity, right? Quote unquote virginity, right? In order to look like a virgin, but they really actually were not. But they say, right, that Rivka,
We're talking about 3 years old.
3 years old.
How it's going
It's good. It's good. Good question. Good question. It's a very good question. Yeah.
Also,
very
he
good
took
question.
her 3 years old.
Yeah.
He bring her 3 years old, and he was waiting for her until she.
10 years. You have to wait.
10,
Yeah.
So
what's
you
the?
tell me 10 years she was there.
So the answer is, Rabbi, regarding what he's asking, it's a very good question, but the truth is, Rabbi, if you really look in the Bible, if you look in the Chumash, and if you look in the Nevi'im, and you'll see what was going on in those days, we find basically that people were maturing much, much faster in those days. You understand? So meaning what? That I can tell you for sure that in those days, a child who was about 5, 6, 7 years old was already fully strong and like a man. That's the way it was in those days.
That's why it says in the Torah that a parent, from what I remember from Yeshiva and from you many years ago, is not even obligated to take care of a child
after 6 years old. Yes, he's right. You see what he's saying?
And if you do,
that's halacha. Halacha says, like you're saying,
if you do take care, these days they're morons until the age of 30. If you do still take care of your child after the age of six, then it's a mitzvah. It's
charity. It's tzedakah.
You're doing more than you should.
You're doing tzedakah. Yeah, that's it. He's right what he's saying. You understand what he's saying? That, by the way, this proves what I'm telling you. Exactly what I'm telling you. Why? Because what's the whole point? That according to the Torah, a person is required to support a child until they're 6 years old. No more than that.
Even now.
After that, yeah, exactly. The Torah doesn't change, right? But what happens is that after they're 6 years old, they tell you to support the child. But you're not obligated from the Torah, but it's a form of charity. It's a tzedakah. You're not doing tzedakah, It's a nice thing to do,
I don't know if those things will apply to
whatever, okay.
We're living according to the Goysha rules now. And
right.
We don't stone our wives for adultery anymore.
Right.
Go to jail if we did that.
Right.
In the old days, observant people had their own court, and they would decide who would live and die. I don't think in Brooklyn now, the rabbis are deciding who's going to live or die.
Very good, David. Very good.
The Goysha court decides that.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
You're not going to leave a 6-year-old child today,
right,
on the street.
Oh, see, what I'm telling you is like this: that it's a nuance. You have to understand nuance over here. The nuance is like this: until they're 6, the Torah requires you to support them. Meaning what? That if you don't, the Torah will punish you because of that. God will punish you. Understand? Once they're 6 years old, now we tell you, listen, support them. But now you get an extra bonus. What? You get like tzedakah. You gave tzedakah, Yeah. Understand?
Okay.
So meaning what? But there is a difference, by the way, practically speaking. What's the practical difference? The Bet Din, the Jewish court, cannot force you anymore to support them at that time. They cannot put you in jail or fine you or anything. They
After 6.
Yeah, that's it. After 6, they cannot force you. They can bring you to the court and say, listen, you're a father. Be a decent person, Support your child. Okay, we'll give you tzedakah. What are you still doing tzedakah? You don't want to do it? You're a jerk. You're an imbecile. But they cannot force you. They can reprimand you. That's it. That's it. Understand? That's what it is.
But I do wish that New York State allowed stoning women.
That's a different discussion, David.
That's one thing we should.
But anyway, Rabbi, what does that prove? That the reason the Torah says that the age of 6 is the cutoff is because at that time, those kids were like adults already. They were able to take care of themselves. They could get a job, Go to the supermarket, get a job over there, Go here and go to the stock market, go to this. They could work like an adult. They were already fully grown. You understand? So that's what we're saying. What we're saying is, Rabbi, that a person who's at that age already is fully grown.
How are you?
Come join us. Come sit down.
I'll talk to him.
No problem. So, Rabbi, what we're saying is that Rivka also, at that time, by the way, the Torah also says another thing. The Talmud says that once a girl is 3 years old, she can have intercourse already. She can have relations with a man. Meaning what? It won't hurt her at that time. It won't do damage to her. Okay? So the truth is, right, at that time when she got married, she was already big enough to have relations with her husband. But she wasn't,
mentally, physically.
Everything. Everything.
Physically also.
But it really means physically. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about physically, right? Because psychologically, that's already different. It's very,
It's like this. Why Yitzchak Avinu waited so many years?
That was a mistake, by the way, what they say. They say it was a mistake, right? Avraham Avinu regretted that he waited so long.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but the truth is, right, that they had to wait that long anyway. Why? Because she was his zivug. You understand? So she was the one that he was supposed to marry. So they were waiting for her to be born. She wasn't born. That was the whole thing. You understand? They had to wait until she was born.
No, about when you bring her to Yitzchak.
So when they brought her to Yitzchak, what's the story? The story is that he married her right away. But then it took 10 years to be eligible to have children. That's what it means, right? He was having relations with her right away. But take 10 years it takes to have children, because you cannot have children when you're 3 years old. You have to wait till you're a teenager. You know what I mean? That's the idea.
So he did live with her.
Yeah, sure, right away. Yeah. That's the way it was. And by the way, you should know that this is something which can be proven in the Tanakh, in the Bible. Why? Because we see, right, also some amazing things. That Yosef HaTzadik, when the brothers came to visit him over there in Mitzrayim, right, they didn't know it was him. So he had over there, who was the leader of who was the right-hand man that he had, chief of staff over there?
His son.
His son, Menashe. How old was he at that time? He was about 6 years old. So he was 6 years old. And he was a powerful man who was able to scare these guys, He was a big, giant goon, this guy. You understand? Very powerful man. So 6 years old, can you imagine? And he was able to scare these guys out of their wits. He took a big boulder, they say, right? And he threw it and he cracked it and, and turned it, Can you imagine a man like this, powerful? 6-year-old. They say, by the way, that when Shlomo HaMelech became king, how old was he at that time? He was 12 years old. 12 years old. Can you imagine becoming a king when you're 12?
Yeah, but this is a different situation. Because when the king is died, you need to be right there with the other king. So it's no matter how old he is.
That's true, but how was he able to run the country when he's 12? Because he was fully grown at that time. He was fully mentally developed. You understand?
Advisors.
Sure, but he himself was already a melech. You understand? He was a melech already. He was a king. Can you imagine today putting somebody 12 years old as a king? They won't do that. Because he's not. He's a child. Shlomo HaMelech, when he became king, he was not a child. He was a fully grown, very, very smart guy.
The history of the Goyim, there was a lot of cases when they put children as a king.
Sure.
In the old days, maybe. Today, you won't find that so much. But,
in France, it's happened a few times.
Right. It could happen, sure. What I'm saying is that in general, right, it's a 12-year-old person becoming a king. It's a very, very strange thing. You know what I mean? So in those days, people were fully grown at that time. That's the whole thing. So it's really, the nature has changed, Rabotai. What I'm trying to tell you is that today, what you see today in the world is not the nature that they had at that time. It's not the same thing. You understand? People were also much more powerful. They were much more strong, in those days. They could they could take like a steel door, and chew it up with their mouth. They were so powerful, these people. They used to, by the way, I'm not talking about 20 generations ago. I'm talking about 2 generations ago. Like they say, like our forefathers, the Georgians, they were very powerful people. Like they say, they used to they could take their fist, and slam into a wall, and break the with their fist, they could break the wall. I'm not talking about a plastic wall. I'm talking about a real wall. You understand? They used to bend like metal bars. You understand? So why am I telling you that? Because things have degenerated, right? The body keeps getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And you can't even play soccer for 20 minutes, right? That's how it is. That's the way it is. Okay, I guess we'll stop here, Rabbi. We're going a long time. Chazak Baruch. Okay, we'll continue next time. God bless you.